Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
All right, welcome back. This is episode 218. This week, we've got a great episode with a really interesting conversation about the three pillars, but we're having that conversation with our good friend and brother, Frater O. So, let's get into that conversation right now. All right, everybody, we are back this week. We've got Frater O on the program, and we've got a really cool topic, one that we have touched base on before. And this week, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of God, but more especially the version that we talk about in Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia, which is a phenomenal resource. But there is a entry for the word God, which just states a belief in the existence of God, blah, 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 blah. But just under that, we have G.O.D. And before we get totally into it, I want to welcome Frater O back to the program. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, anytime. So the reason we came up with this topic was Frater O had an interesting experience in conversation while attending a Scottish Rite degree recently, and this came up. So the Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia defines God in the acronym sense as G.O.D., which says, the initials of Gomer, Oz, Dabar. It is a singular coincidence, and worthy of thought, that the letters composing the English name of deity should be the initials of the Hebrew words for wisdom, strength, and beauty. The three great pillars, or metaphorical supports of Masonry, they seem to present almost the only reason that can reconcile a Mason to use the initial G in its conspicuous suspension in the east of the lodge in the place of the delta. The incident seems to be more than an accident. Thus, the initials conceal the true meaning. So there you have this. Now, what we have just read in the beginning, it says it is a singular coincidence. So this is something that is singular to Freemasonry. I should start off by saying our traditional etymology of the word God is essentially, it's erroneously attributed to the word good. That, you guys should just throw that away. That's not correct. It can be traced to pi or the word poured. In some original Greek dialects, they use the word to pour earth or poured earth, referring to burial mounds. There's even some interesting instances where it seems to mean pulling from a Germanic sense, talking about burial mounds and things of this nature. So it is interesting, but then eventually we come to the word deus, D-E-U-S, which is probably the best representation of it in its true etymological form. So because of that, I want to reiterate the fact that this is a coincidence, but a most beautiful one for Freemasonry because of what it actually can mean or does mean within the craft. So with that, I want to pass it over to Frater O, who has kind of the origins of the episode.
You know, we always say shocking correlations.
That's your. That's. I still got to get your shirt, Frater O. Shocking correlate. # shocking correlations.
Big shout out to Brother Evan, who had the pleasure of sitting in one of the Scottish Rite valleys when we were having this discussion. And we're sitting back and looking at the three pillars, which is pretty significant in most side bodies or even the Blue Lodge, comparing the two and getting deeper into those aspects. So that's how this discussion came up. And the Latin translation of G.O.D. and the translation of wisdom, strength, and beauty. There's three massive parallels back to the first degree, right? So if we look at the pillar system of the left pillar and the right pillar and the center pillar, you could clearly see on any Masonic tracing board that's publicly printed. There's no secrets there. You can find it on so many lodges' websites and the Indental Trust Board. That with the correlations of wisdom, strength, and beauty, there's massive significance when you start studying the Sephiroths or the Tree of Life when it comes to Kabbalah, or especially in the southern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite, you see some shocking correlations there too. RJ, I know you studied the Kabbalah pretty extensively. Do you care to shed some light?
I would. First of all, I study the Kabbalah as a severe neophyte, by no means an expert. But what is interesting is there is a very significant correlation between Freemasonry, the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah, and these pillars. And this relationship is not singular to Freemasonry, although Freemasonry might be the impetus, or it might be the jumping off point per se. I mean, the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn uses a form of this. The Builders of the Adytum uses a form of this. I think the OTO does as well. Really what we're looking at with these three pillars, we've got beauty, strength, and wisdom. And if you just do a Google search for the Kabbalistic tree, spellings vary, of course, but what we have essentially are 11 emanations, or these like 11 points that are on 3 lines. And these lines kind of start at the top and they filter through until they get to the bottom. At the top, it's Keter, which is like God, unfiltered, absolute, God, oneness type stuff, until we're getting to the bottom, which is Malkuth, which is the firmament where we live. And these pillars, or these 3 lines within the Kabbalistic tree, denote a sacred masculine, a sacred feminine, and an equilibrium between the two. And this is not singular to Freemasonry. However, it is in multiple systems. In fact, if you search for this, you will find that the pillars are a frequent depiction. And a lot of times you'll see the Kabbalistic tree placed over 2 pillars with a man in the center. And this is very key. The pillars representing negative and positive. You'll hear the mystical tales regarding the pillars, sometimes coming from Egypt. One representing, evil, one representing good, or one made to withstand some sort of global cataclysm by fire, one to survive by flood. These go on throughout Freemasonry, but that doesn't explain the third pillar. These are always just the 2, but the third pillar is the mystic kind of idea, the perfection, the thing that we're supposed to seek, which is this sacred blending of the 2 pillars. And so I guess if we were going to look at it in a certain way, we look at the pillars as Gomer, Oz, Dabar, meaning actually in the order, we always think it's wisdom, strength, and beauty because that's how it's written in ritual, but those actually are beauty, strength, wisdom. And when we look at them, we can think about beauty as this kind of, it's not just this idealistic, superficial beauty. We're looking at something that's intricate, something that's unknown, maybe even ineffable. Strength, I'll come back to, but wisdom is this kind of Gnostic sense, this absolute truth. And then this leads to that third pillar, that third column of the blending or the equilibrium, which is essentially supposed to be strength. And I think on a surface level, what we can probably talk about is how, if you are blending these 2 things, if you have that equilibrium, you are building in strength. It's not the typical kind of strength. We're not talking about brute strength, how much you bench or you squat or whatever. This is strength of character, the strength of one's ability to be open enough to have feelings and yet strong enough to carry out things. And these are alluded to on several aspects during our Entered Apprentice lectures, which I'm not going to go into, obviously, but if we're listening to cardinal virtues even, we tend to see these 3 elements play out throughout all of the lectures and in the degree work, but one does need to peel back the layers, as it were, just a bit.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of what you mentioned, and getting back to beauty, strength, and wisdom. Take a look at the launch, and let's look at there are some great. If you just Google wisdom, strength, and beauty, there's wonderful images that will come up and show you pillars, and will show you diagrams, as well as some really great papers. And if we looked at wisdom, strength, and beauty, we look at beauty, strength, and wisdom as the junior warden, senior warden, and worshipful master. So to RJ's point, we look at beauty, it symbolizes the junior warden. And if you think about when the lodges opens and close, pay attention to what each warden or master says and the significance of that meaning. Those words tell you a great deal. There's a lot hidden. when you talk about strength, we get to the senior warden, which is usually pretty emblematic of the Doric column. And to digress for a second, I overlooked the beauty aspect of the junior warden symbolizes the Corinthian column. And then, of course, when we get to the east, worshipful master represents the Ionic pillar. There's some people argue certain other ways. That's the way I have seen it. And there's some beautiful symbolism there. Now, if we take a step back and we look at the lodge, and then we take a look at the pillar system, and then we look at the degree when you go through it, again, we've talked about this before, look at different sides of the way certain things are. There's a massive significance why there's things where they are and why you're hoodwinked or why there's the way you're dressed. It's pretty prevalent to, again, what we're getting into, or, for Masons that are listening to, or even non-Masons. Now, with that said, let's take another step back. We've talked many times before the correlation between the allegory of King Solomon's temple to the human body. If we look at the pillar system, the human body, and we can start to see there's a correlation. There's been shown equilibrium and there's polarity of the human body, positive or negative, or left brain or right brain, or essentially we're a human battery. And if you're able to balance that through your actions and through your deeds and through your words and through your meditations and through exercise or stretching or yoga, you can find more smoothness and order to your life, the average chaos that the majority of us have to go through, those rough sands and those really difficult tides to find that peaceful or calm sea. Now, if we take a look at the Scottish Rite, there's a double-headed eagle. It's pretty prevalent there, too, of polarity as well. But digressing back into the three-pillar system, and there's many different systems off of Masonry that get into all kinds of pillar systems. If you get into the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, which I'm not a member of, or I don't believe RJ is as well, but there was a great book called The Middle Pillar by Israel Regarde, which is a great book, and it gets into meditations and, again, the pillar system as well.
You had talked about one of the books that you had just mentioned. There's another good book, too, that you can probably pick up through Kessinger reprints if you just search for it on Amazon.com. Be aware there's probably a couple different reprint companies that do these. Kessinger I like. I know there's a couple guys who don't like Kessingers. I like them because they're cheap and they're just quick facsimile reprints. But one is called The Three Pillars, and it's by George Oliver. He does a pretty good job in the book, laying out just a few extra things and really guides you along. And again, whenever we read these books, it's really important. It's important to me personally. It should be very important to realize for yourselves that there are a lot of books in Freemasonry that are out there, and my biggest pet peeve is that a lot of guys they like to stab in the dark and see what hits. Maybe they're going to hit something, maybe they're not. And where I'm going with this is there's a lot of Twilight speak. We don't always know what that means, and we read it and we don't quite know what we just read, but we just think, oh, this guy must know more than me. And the other pet peeve is that there's a lot written and nothing said. So take what you read with a grain of salt and see how it applies in your lives. But George Oliver, The Three Pillars, sorry about the tangent. There's also a really cool paper that explains this quite a bit. I published something on the Midnight Freemasons a few years ago, and actually the graphic is still up. And if you search G.O.D., my graphic comes up, but the piece doesn't. It's on the Midnight Freemasons, and it's very brief, like a paragraph or two. There's a longer piece that was actually done by John Lee Crom back in December of 1994, and it says, entered into electronic form by Brother Kenneth Ottinger, March of 96. And the paper is Wisdom, Strength, and Beauty, a research paper, and it's a decent size, short paper you could probably read to your lodge. And he goes over the proper, if you're going to say Wisdom, Strength, and Beauty, it would be Dabar, Oz, Gomer, but he says that if we reverse it, because everything's hidden in plain sight for us, it's simply just God. In it, he says that if we look closely, we can see how, quote, Masonry conceals her secrets from those not ready to receive them. For by reversing the order of the letters, we find the name of the supreme architect of the universe. And he's got a couple more paragraphs. But I'm going to put a link to this paper inside the show notes for you guys to check that out too. I think it's important you guys get a good read out of that.
There's another paper too I'm going to throw in there if you want to get deeper into the Kabbalah aspects. Brother Gene Michael David from tarotstudies.org, he wrote a really good essay as well on the 3 pillars.
That would be really great, because that's going to get a little bit deeper for us, especially for some of our brothers out there who are studying things like tarot and Boda, which is huge on the tarot for like the first 2 years.
It's the tarot is another interesting allegory. And so we see these same symbols and these same allegories represented over and over and over throughout time. The most important thing is you find out which allegory works for you and which system works for you and where you can find it. Personally, for me, I can't speak for RJ. Symbology is important. You can hide a lot in symbology, and it's up for the candidate or it's up for you to figure out what's hidden. And sometimes the best place to find what's hidden directly in plain sight is to dive deep inside your mind or deep in meditation. And that can be pretty scary for a lot of people. But don't be afraid. The only things you have there, things you put in place. The only roadblocks you have are your own. With that said, we really appreciate you listening to the show. Hopefully we're able to provide a little bit of light and you enjoyed our topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we'll put links to this stuff in the show notes. I'm also, because I think any of our listeners who decide that they want to travel a little deeper, I will go ahead and put links up to builders of the Addendum as well, if anybody's interested. Self-study coursework, heavy on tarot, but very plain language, tells it like it is. You don't really have to worry about too much. It is still a journey, and they don't give away, it's not just like, oh, this is what it means, boom. It is like that to a sense, but it helps you, I think, in a modern sense, get what we're talking about, or get what they're talking about, rather. But again, as Frater O said, the symbolism of these 3 pillars really is interesting. When I explain the meaning to Masons at an appropriate time during a degree, not that this is part of our degree, but like afterwards, I will mention this to them because I think it's absolutely important and super interesting to think about when we talk about deity as being the beauty, the strength, and the wisdom of the universe or of the ages or whatever. And I think it's just a beautiful way to describe this kind of all-encompassing deity that we all agree exists somehow, whether that's a supreme being, whether that's this creative force that we call nature, or whatever that is. But we have to agree that there seems to be some wisdom, and there's definitely strength and beauty behind it. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, everything will be in the show notes, and we really appreciate it. And thanks again for hopping on the show with us this week, Frater.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was one of our shorter talks. However, I feel like it was a necessary conversation to have and to talk a little bit about some of the more common symbols that we have in our lodges and their significance. Now, again, this is a symbol, or a word God anyway, that has been adapted or adopted by Freemasonry in this way. So, again, I hope you enjoyed. Super interesting conversation, as always. A huge thanks goes out to Frater O for making the time for us to come on and talk. If you'd like to support this show, this is, again, listener-supported education. This show doesn't happen without the support of our listeners. So you can go to wcypodcast.com and you can click on Make a Direct Donation, where you can make a direct donation through PayPal as a one-time donation, or you can become a monthly contributor. Whether you're a contributor, fellow, or a producer, we have 3 different options there for you, and you can cancel that at any time. So if you want to donate, $2 a month for the next 3 months or something, that's awesome. So thanks everybody for doing those. And even if you're just a one-time donator who donates $2 to the show, it's all appreciated, and it goes right back into the production of this show and keeping everything running and keeping your episodes up forever. If you'd like to do a little something different, you can pick up our limited edition pin, which has a unique symbology behind it, all explained on our website, wcypodcast.com. Just hover over Support the Show, click on Limited Edition Shop, and you'll see the pins there, an explanation of those. And if you could scroll down a little bit, you'll even see we have cufflinks, money clips, and the tie bars might be sold out. But you'll know if you click on buy it now and it tells you can't buy it. We also have the Mason's Lady car decal, which is really popular. It's a really nice decal. You peel the back off, slap it on your car, then you peel the plastic overlay off of that, and it's great. You'll see a picture of my wife's van with the car sticker on there also right there in the limited edition shop. Other ways to support the show. Maybe you want to do some shopping and you like to get a little something, you want to get a discount. What if some of the proceeds could come back to this show? Well, we've got a few options for you there. So you can go to our website, again, hover over support the show, click on Get Onnit or Alpha Brain, and once you click that link, you're inside of Onnit's website, and anything you choose to buy at that point, they know you came through our website to get there. And because of that, they send us a small portion of the proceeds that they make. Again, going through our link doesn't jack your price up so that it can be discounted or anything. It's the same price as if you had gone through Onnit.com just normally. You're going to get 10% off if you use the promo code WCY as well. So help yourself out, help your wallet out, and then you can help the show out. It's really cool. Another great example of this kind of relationship is what we've got going on with Bankers Best. So if you go to buybankersbest.com or you go to our website, click through our affiliate links. Again, just hover over support the show and click on Bankers Best and you'll go there. And when you do that, you'll see a ton of really great products. Just click on them and you can use the promo code BBWCY357 at checkout and you'll get 20% off of your order. And of course, there is King Solomon Reserve Beard Oil and Balm. It's a really cool product that we worked exclusively with Brother Levi Banker with. Everything from the artwork to the scent was crafted specifically with Freemasonry in mind, actually. It's a great product, and if you buy that, 50% of the profits actually come right back to this show. So it's a really, really great relationship we have, and I can't thank Brother Levi Banker for helping us out so much with this. It's been a great fundraiser, and that's it, guys. So thanks for listening to how we support this show, and thanks even more if you're clicking on those links and doing some of that shopping or donating to the program. It's great. We can't do it without you. Again, listener-supported education. So huge thanks goes out to everybody. And before we close out, I wanted to thank Brother Robert Jackson for his contributions on the Midnight Freemasons. And also, he sent me a really nice Massachusetts Masonry pin, which I wholly appreciate. It was very nice of you. Thank you so much, brother. And with that, I'll talk to you all next week. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.